Good morning, everyone. Today, I am going to present a topic on research methodology for engineers. This course is guided by me, T. Harina Reina, who is an advisor at Osmania University, OTBI. In this presentation, we will understand different concepts related to research problem, research techniques, data, analysis, and various methods used in engineering research. This course is divided into 5 important modules. The first module is Research Problem Formulation, which explains how to identify and define a research problem. The second module is Hypothesis Formulation, where assumptions and predictions are developed. The third module focuses on statistical techniques. The fourth module explains statistical analysis of data. Finally, the fifth module discusses how to prepare a proper research report. Overall, these modules help students learn the complete process of research step by step. This slide explains the topics covered under research problem formulation. First, we study the overview of a research problem and understand its meaning. Then we learn about the different sources from which research problems can arise. Next, we understand how to deal with research problems effectively and what criteria make a research problem good and meaningful. The slide also explains common errors made while selecting research problems. Finally, it introduces the different types of research problems and the nature and use of arguments in research. These topics help researchers think clearly and choose suitable problems for study. This slide introduces the basic idea of arguments. An argument mainly involves two possibilities: accepting or rejecting something based on judgment. In research, arguments are important because researchers must evaluate information carefully before accepting conclusions. Judgment should be logical, evidence-based, and unbiased. This forms the foundation for critical thinking in research methodology. This slide explains the meaning of an argument. An argument is an attempt to convince someone that a particular claim is true or false. To support the claim, several reasons or supporting statements are provided. The conclusion of an argument may sometimes become debatable because different people may have different opinions or interpretations. In research, strong arguments are built using facts, logic, and evidence rather than assumptions. This slide focuses on claims in an argument. A claim should satisfy two important conditions. First, it must be acceptable, meaning it should be believable and supported by facts. Second, it must be relevant, meaning it should directly relate to the topic or conclusion. If a claim is not acceptable or relevant, the argument becomes weak and unreliable. This slide shows an observation example. When we see smoke from a distance, we naturally assume that something is burning or cooking there. This demonstrates how observation leads to reasoning and conclusions. In research, observations often become the starting point for identifying problems and forming hypotheses. This slide gives a practical example of arguments. The speaker assumes that someone is cooking dabokolo because it is evening time and many street vendors usually prepare food in that area during evenings. The argument is supported by previous experience and environmental clues like direction, time, and local habits. This example explains how people use reasoning and evidence to make conclusions in daily life. This slide explains that claims can be of different types. One example is the laws of nature, which explain how the natural world works. Another example is moral law, which explains how human beings should behave. The slide also states that humans can understand the laws of nature and should follow them responsibly. This shows that claims can be scientific, moral, or philosophical depending on the context. This slide explains dependent and independent claims in detail. A dependent claim needs additional evidence or supporting facts before reaching a conclusion. An independent claim, however, directly supports an argument's conclusion even without other supporting claims. This distinction is important because research arguments often involve multiple connected claims. This slide introduces two categories of claims: dependent and independent claims. Some claims require support from other facts, while some claims can directly support a conclusion on their own. Understanding these types helps researchers analyze arguments more clearly and logically. This slide explains how claims are identified using specific words or phrases. Examples include words like because, since, given that, and for the reason that. These words help readers recognize explanations, evidence, and conclusions within an argument. In research writing, such phrases improve clarity and logical flow. This slide highlights that every claim requires support or explanation. A claim alone is not enough. It must be explained with evidence, examples, or detailed discussion. Supporting paragraphs strengthen the credibility of the research argument and help readers understand the reasoning clearly. This slide explains the concept of valid arguments. An argument is considered valid when the claims logically support the conclusion. If the claims are true, then the conclusion should also logically be true. Validity mainly focuses on logical structure rather than whether the claims are actually correct in real life. This slide provides an example of a valid argument. The example says that Mr. Atom is an economics professor and all economics professors are socialists. Therefore, Mr. Atom is a socialist. Logically, the argument structure is valid. However, the second statement is not necessarily true in reality. So even though the argument is logically valid, it is not considered a good argument because one claim is false. This teaches us that both logic and factual accuracy are important in research. This slide introduces argument analysis. Analyzing arguments means examining the structure, logic, and evidence used in an argument. It also explains how longer arguments can be summarized effectively for better understanding and evaluation. This slide explains the purpose of summarizing arguments. Summarizing helps present the main ideas of a long argument in simple and concise words. The slide introduces standardization, which is a method used for organizing arguments logically. It also mentions two important skills: paraphrasing, finding missing claims and conclusions. These skills improve critical thinking and communication. This slide explains paraphrasing. Paraphrasing means rewriting a passage using different words while keeping the original meaning unchanged. A good paraphrase should be accurate, clear, and concise. This skill is very important in research writing because it helps avoid plagiarism and improves understanding. The slide discusses hidden or missing claims in arguments. Sometimes arguments contain assumptions that are not directly stated. For example, advertisements often use incomplete logic to influence people. The slide also explains that weak arguments may hide missing claims to make the conclusion appear stronger. Researchers should carefully analyze such arguments before accepting them. This slide explains standardization in detail. Standardization means rewriting arguments in a proper logical format. Each step of the argument is numbered clearly. Claims are presented before conclusions and justifications are provided for every conclusion. This method improves clarity and logical understanding. This slide explains the 5 important steps used in standardizing arguments. First, identify the main conclusion. Second, remove unnecessary or irrelevant information. Third, arrange claims before conclusions in logical order. Fourth, include any missing claims or conclusions. Finally, provide proper justification for each conclusion. Following these steps helps create strong and organized research arguments. This slide summarizes all the key points of today's discussion. Today's session focused on the nature and use of arguments in research and their different types. We also learned how to summarize arguments effectively using proper phrasing and logical structure. Finally, we studied the 5 important steps involved in creating standard arguments. These concepts are essential for developing strong analytical and research skills. I hope this session helped you understand the basics of research methodology and arguments in research. Thank you for your attention.